Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's PETinar, which is on the subject of EU directives, and specifically asks the question, are you fit for 2024? Now, a lot is happening next year and over the rest of the decade. We have covered the subject of tethered caps, I do beg your pardon, tethered caps quite frequently, and they are becoming a legislative requirement next year. There's a lot more coming over the next few years, and subjects like the circular economy, circular manufacturing, recover, reuse and recycling, waste, use of water resources, and end-of-life criteria are all very much on the agenda. Now, environmental issues of waste, recycling, and environmental sustainability have been dominating the agenda for several years. Many EU member states, however, are not on track to meet recycling targets for municipal waste or for packaging waste, according to a report published just 3 months ago in June this year. 10 member states are at risk of missing both municipal waste and total packaging waste recycling targets in 2025. 8 are at risk of missing the municipal waste recycling target, but are on track to meet the total packaging target. 9 member states are likely to meet the recycling targets for everything from municipal and total packaging, and that includes Austria, Belgium, Czechia, Denmark, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and Slovenia, but only 4 of them are also likely to meet all material-specific packaging targets in 2025. 12 member states are at risk of missing at least 2 material-specific packaging recycling targets next year. 19 member states, 19 out of 27 member states will struggle to meet the 50% plastic packaging recycling target in 2025. So this is a very mixed bag and not what was in mind when the target dates were set, I suspect. The report makes the point that many member states need to significantly step up their efforts and better monitor the effectiveness of policy measures in order to address the risk areas identified in this assessment. And that seems to be putting it a bit mildly. Now, we are privileged to have with us today Dr. Wolfgang Trunk, EU Director General, Environment, Circular Economy, from Waste to Resources, who will talk to us about single-use plastics and all PET use, tethered caps, waste, and end-of-life criteria for plastics. Now, if there is someone better placed to talk about the legislative environment and EU policy, I'm not sure who it could possibly be. So after him, Sjoerd van Laar, Product Manager, Full Container Inspection from Heuft Systemtechnik, will give a presentation on the implications for closure inspection systems when implementing tethered caps. Now, the environment is rightly a concern for current and future generations. Ensuring a sustainable future will involve legislation, technology, and systems, and above all, the will and desire to actually achieve the objectives. I look forward to hearing what our presenters have to say, and I hope you do too. Oh, just one more thing before we get into the meat of the presentation. There will be an opportunity for questions, and feel free to pose them as we go along, but they will be answered at the end. And now I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Trunk, EU Director General in Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It's Dr. Trunk online. Did you hear my...
Yeah, I just, you were lost, we didn't hear you, but now we hear you again. At least I hear you.
Okay. Right, well, I was going to say, yes, I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Trunk, the EU Director General, Environment, Circular Economy, from Waste to Resources. So over to you, Dr. Trunk.
Yes, hello from Brussels. Indeed, I thank you very much for your nice words and for the promotion. I'm not a Director General. I'm working in the Directorate General, and I'm I'm just a team leader but responsible for waste to resource legislation, and in this respect, especially on the packaging, which is our let's say our biggest pillar or flagship at the moment when it comes to PET or plastic legislation. So I will guide you through the recent developments, give you an update, and then open up a little bit the discussion. Let's say, already kind of prepare the way for the field for the discussion. Indeed, I'm already happy that you, in your introductory remarks, already rolled out or presented the outcome of the early warning reports from June. It is indeed for us another not incentive, but a justification that we have to come up with a new packaging law, with something meaningful, with something efficient, ambitious, and also to have a change in the real approach that we have, because the early warning reports show for another time that we are not really achieving our commitments, our objectives with the current set of directives and law. So my presentation will indeed, as I mentioned already, focus on the packaging, but I will also at the end make some statements about the SUPD. Fortunately, also we have after us somebody addressing the tethered caps. This is something that I will not touch upon. I will mainly go on PET, let's say, circularity in my proposal. Here on this slide, I just give you some indication that even if our Commission proposal for packaging would come fully true, even then we would have to increase our recycling capacity significantly. And so it's not the case that with our proposal we put an end or we would put at risk investments in recycling. It has to be significantly increased again until 2030. So we still have a lot of concrete measures in the proposal to improve and increase plastic or packaging waste. On the next slide, I will, or next few slides, I will not make too much details about the recyclability. I just want to say we need to come up in the packaging legislation with something meaningful, and the strongest game-changing element of the new proposal is that we come up with sustainability criteria at product sustainability requirements at product level. So we do not we address directly the economic operator with strict requirements that he has to comply with if he wants to place packaging on the market. We also require, and one of the sustainability requirements is the full recyclability by 2030. So we come up with a two-step approach. At first, we enable the verification of the technical recyclability, and then in the next step we want to make sure that it is also recycled at scale, that it is recycled, not only recyclable, but also that it is really recycled. This is let's say what we call recyclability at scale. We come up with this design for recycling criteria, and based on these we will categorize the different or score the different packaging materials, and so we can we can have, based on this performance grades of a specific packaging, we also would like to see, or we encourage, or we make the so-called fee modulation based on this recyclability performance of a specific packaging. Yes, I said already I will not dig so deep into all the details of the procedure of our approach, what we will do. But I give you just the idea, what is the approach, the architecture, what we will do in recyclability. But just to showcase a little bit what it implies, this product or these requirements at product level. So each manufacturer, producer who places packaging on the market has to prove that he is compliant with these requirements. And so we have the market surveillance authorities in the member states. So the member states in future, they are not anymore the ones which have to fulfill the targets or comply with the targets, for instance, recycling targets. But they enforce via their market surveillance authorities that the products that are on their member state territory placed on the market, that they comply with these rules in terms of recyclability, but also, and now I come to the next, also in terms of recycled content in plastics. This is another crucial element when it comes to of our sustainability requirements. Another one is the compostability, compostable plastics, but this is not so important for the PET sector. Therefore, I will not dive deeper on it. But on the recycled content, what did we do in plastics? We, starting from the recycled plastic, from the plastic packaging that we forecast for 2030 to be placed on the market, we calculated what will be collected for recycling, and then this is the mass flow that we produced in order to come to a potential recycled content volume in 2030. This is the max that we would see that can be potential to become recycled content. And as I said already, this famous Article 7 sets inclusion rates for recycled content, and we are clear, we are only talking about post-consumer plastic waste as starting material for the recycling that can be accounted for these to meet these standards. And we are requiring it for the plastic part of the packaging. So if you have a composite packaging, for instance, a cardboard beverage container, and it has 15% plastics, then this 15% plastic must comply with these requirements, with these percentages. I mentioned already the conformity assessment procedure for the market surveillance of the member states. You see we have different values for plastic bottles, for the beverage plastic bottles, SUP bottles, if I can put it like that. And then within the other contact-sensitive packaging, we distinguish between PET and other the polyolefins. And for the PET, we have the same 30% proposed than for the PET bottles. And for the rest of the plastic packaging, non-contact sensitive plastic packaging, we require whatever polymers are used, 35% inclusion rate. This is maybe also interesting for you. This is our analysis, what these percentages would mean in terms of additional recyclates that would be needed in order to comply with these inclusion rates. And for PET, you see, we see that the increase would be in the contact sensitive area in 200,000 to 230,000 tons, and you see, just this is for you to explain a little bit. This is in addition to what we already expect from the SUPD. You saw that for the beverage bottles, we have already, we just copy the 30%, but and therefore there is no additional increase for 2030 because we also in the flow chart we had already the quantities that we need for the 30% target in the plastic beverage bottles. But you see here, this is the additional amount, and compared to the 5, just to recall you, the total amount of potential recyclates was 5.3 million tons per year, and in 2030. So this is this shows, of course, that we would be very much below the, and we would not see any shortages in these materials, but you know that we have due to the fact that we require it for each operator to comply with these rules, you know, we have had to come up with exemptions. I don't spell out all the exemptions. You know them probably well. You can just go also to the articles. But the exemptions from the onset are there to avoid supply chains disruptions just due to this requirement. Then we have for the calculation methodology and the verification of the recycled content, we will come up with an implementing act in time to be applied. But this is also to be applied on a if a manufacturer wants to voluntarily already make a claim about recycled content as of 29, he must apply this methodology. This is a little bit against greenwashing. We also propose to have a link between the recycled content and the EPR fee. And then I come to, let's say, the general a review clause that we already have from the onset, where we can say we have a check of the review of the derogations, but also to exclude further plastic packaging items that might be where it might be appropriate to do so. And apart from that, of course, we have the general Commission empowerment for a review of all the recycled content, requirements. For instance, due to lack of availability of market for market reasons, excessive prices, and this is our strong case where we say we do not want to give this priority access or right of first approval. This would be for us against the market. We want to not to have intervene in this recycled markets to that extent, but we still have a kind of a safeguard measure here, which I highlighted. Then in this content, of course, there is the big discussion when it comes to plastic recycling, chemical recycling to complement mechanical recycling. This is our approach. This is also mirrored in the figures in the table that I showed you. We have calculated what would be the potential of the mechanical recycling, and the higher we go with the inclusion rates, that would imply even higher use of chemical recycling technologies in the value chain. I think that was it for the packaging. I prepared two more packaging regulation. I prepared two more slides On the Single-Use Plastic Directive, you know that it established targets for 2025 and 2030. For the 2030 target is for all single-use plastic bottles, but we just take over this value, this 30%, but there is a big difference. We are, let's say, a little bit more demanding because these single-use plastic targets are at member state level, and it is very difficult to enforce in reality how the member states make sure that overall on their territory they meet this. Therefore, we come up with this, I already mentioned it, product-based requirements at producer level, and therefore we it is let's say it is a little bit more ambitious or demanding than if we allow the member states within a member state a kind of balancing out to meet this target. Yes, so this is what is the difference between the packaging waste, our regulation, and the existing SOPD. You know that in preparation of the 25 target, we are currently trying to implement, to come up with this implementing decision for the mechanically recycled PET. Because the 25 target is just for PET bottles, and therefore it would be it's sufficient if we refer to this in our first step with the implementing decision, and I can tell you that we strive to adopt it in October, this implementing act. But also we already launched the discussion about the next step, about the methodology for recycled content in the moment chemical recycling would step in or kick in. Also, which would imply the mass balance accounting. On this, we are still, let's say, testing with the member states and with the stakeholders what kind of approach we would do on chemical recycling, mass balance accounting. This is still something which will come at the earliest in the beginning of the next year, so that this is. But in fact, coming back to the packaging, as you might know, the packaging regulation will repeal this 2030 target in the SUPD. That means that once the packaging is adopted, it kind of supersedes this. But the discussions about the chemical recycling are already starting, or started already in the, let's say, in the margins of in the context of the SUPD, but it will in the end materialize only in 2030, when we hope to have established or adopted the packaging regulation, and then take or let's say roll over the approach to all plastic packaging, also including the SOP beverage bottles. This is my last slide. That I just would call a reality check on RPT recycled PET. Of course, we are currently in the SOPD closely linked to the food contact material legislation. This is the bottles are food contact material, are under the scope of this. Therefore, the respective legislation or main legislation is the last year's recycled plastic regulation, which requires that the procedure must be authorized for the technology must be authorized, but also we have to have a register of installations who can do this, who can apply these authorized processes. Here it's just an example, for how such a register could look like. And the last point on the third bullet points on the full contact material legislation, we have to ensure that only recycled PET comes only from an authorized process or a technology, a recycling process, and that it is that the feedstock comes from separate waste collection, and that the feedstock is 90% food grade. So this is what we have to respect already today, and it is already happening today. And in terms of market developments, I think many people in the call or in the webinar are more familiar with what happens in the market. But we see there is a big interest in third countries to deliver this value or market. We call it as we call it. We create this market for secondary raw materials, and recycled PET became a very valuable secondary raw materials, which is good. But also it implies that we have a lot of interest from outside Europe to deliver these to come on this market. We have to kind of warn our competent authorities who are at the borders that this incoming material fulfills fully the requirements. This is really something very important, which we learned. We were not expecting such big interest or such big import flows, but it's just for you. We are aware of it. It is, and we are trying to alert the authorities at the borders to avoid or to make sure that all the materials, recycled PET bales or pallets, that they are compliant with our requirements I just outlined. So this was my presentation, and I thank you for your attention.
Dr. Trunk, thank you very much indeed. And I hope everybody can hear me this time. Sorry about the freeze earlier on. Just to make sure that everybody is aware of something I said about questions. There will be an opportunity for questions, and please pose them as we go along. And we have already got a few, which is great, but they're going to be answered at the end. We're not going to interrupt the presentations to answer the questions as we go along. I mean, I've got a couple as well, and as I'm in charge, I will be able to ask them, make sure they're asked. Thank you again, Dr. Trunk. That's great, and we'll see you in about 15 minutes if you'll be available to answer questions. Is that going to be okay? I hope so.
Yes, okay. Of course.
Right, thanks. Now, I'm going to go straight on to introduce Sjoerd van Laar from Heuft Systemtechnik. He is product manager, full container inspection systems. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing what he has to say about improvements for closure inspection systems, because this is a key part of what is going on. This is the technology and the systems that can enable us to ensure that the product is compatible, compliant, and is recyclable. Over to you. Thanks, Sjoerd.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for inviting me to speak today in this PETinar. Thank you, Mr. Trunk, for the interesting information that you already presented. Yeah, let me take over control of the presentation. And that's not working. That's not working, guys. I cannot see anything.
Okay, so you can just tell me when the next slide comes, and I will guide you through.
All right. So yeah, thank you for the short introduction already. My name is Sjoerd van Laar, and I'm a product manager at the company Heuft Systemtechnik, and I'm responsible for our full container inspection solutions. amongst others, of course, the closure inspection systems. So let me go to the next slide and first tell something about the company Heuft. Are we in the next slide? I hope we're in slide 2 now. So Heuft Systemtechnik is a German-based company. Our head office is located between Koblenz and Bonn in Germany, and we're founded in 1979. We're located in a volcanic region, and the company was established because our founder was trying to find a solution to automatically inspect the fill levels of mineral water bottles. So that's how the company started. We are still producing our machines here in Germany, but at the moment we are in 18 locations active worldwide, and we still have some partners active. We're a bit over 1,000 employees at the moment, and our mission is ensuring product quality. So let us go to slide number 3, please. So as I already mentioned, the company was founded for developing a fill level inspection system for mineral water bottles, so for the beverage industry. We gathered a lot of knowledge on how to inspect those bottles, also with high production outputs. And that knowledge that we gathered, we implemented it after a couple of years into the food industry. And in the food industry, we also learned a lot about foreign object inspection, mainly used X-ray inspection solutions. And all the knowledge that we gathered in the beverage and the food industry, we also implemented that in the pharma industry a couple of years ago. So we're currently active in 3 different sectors, but beverage industry still being the main sector where Heuft is active. So let us go to next slide, please. Here I want to give you an idea about a classical filling line. Here in this slide, we have a returnable filling line to show you the inspection solutions that Heuft can also offer in a system where returnable bottles come in. But it is meant to give you an idea that we are delivering systems from the beginning of the line, during the filling, closing procedure, the labeling procedure, up to the filled products at the end of the line again. And today we focus on the inspection system behind the filler closer machine. So as you see, I highlighted some devices that we want to talk about today. So if we go to the next slide, we see 3 devices, the Heuft Spectrum, Heuft Prime, and Heuft One system. And these systems are all full container inspection systems capable of inspecting a closure. So it's our full container family. It starts with the Heuft One, which on the right side, it has, as it said, one smart inspection solution. Let's say bigger brother of the family is the Heuft Prime. And the mother of the family is the Heuft Spectrum device. And this device is the most sophisticated inspection solution that Heuft is offering in the range of full container inspection solutions. So when we are talking about these devices, I hope many of you joining the PETinar today already have seen these devices somewhere in the field. If not, then I hope you will see one soon. So that is the company Heuft and the inspection solutions that we offer. Let me then go to the next slide and stop with the commercial part, and let us go in the part of tethered caps. As I already mentioned before, I'm the responsible product manager also for our closure inspection systems. And of course, we have a lot of work to do at the moment with the implementation of the so-called tethered caps, driven by the EU Directive 904. And I want to talk to you today about which inspection tasks of a closure inspection system are or can be affected by a tethered cap, the difference between rotational symmetric and rotational asymmetric tamper evident bands of closures, It mainly has to do with the production principle behind. And afterwards, I would like to highlight some of the differences, what kind of different inspection solutions there are in the market. Because, as you saw on the first slide, the topic of the day is the impact of implementing tethered caps and the impact on the closure inspection system. This is defined by either, by on one side, the closure type that you're implementing, and on the other side, of course, the inspection system that is currently installed in your line. These two variables together are defining the impact to be expected when implementing these tethered caps. So let's go to the next slide, slide 7. I am at the moment, Ms. Visser. Here on the slide, you see lots of different tethered cap solutions, just some images made in our inspection device to give you an idea how different tethered solutions can look different for us and for our inspection system. So when we talk about the impact, it's clear that there are several inspection tasks that are not affected when implementing a tethered cap. That are the inspection tasks for the presence of the closure, the overheight of the closure, checking the correct color, searching for canted closures. Those inspection tasks are not affected by tethered cap. So when you are implementing such a tethered cap in your line, you don't have to worry about the impact when you only are searching for these inspection tasks. However, the more sophisticated systems are usually also inspecting the tamper evident band itself, and these systems can be affected depending on the closure type. So when you're searching for broken bridges, broken tamper bands, wedged in thread defects, those defects can be affected by implementing a tethered cap. So if we go to the next slide, I want to show you a short animation of how these different tethered caps are looking in our inspection device. So on the left side, we see a closure that is quite different compared to a closure that we know so far. So on the right side, we have an animation of a slittered tamper evident band tethered solution, and that is looking quite similar to a traditional flat cap as we know it. On the left side, we have a kind of rotational asymmetric view in the tamper evident band area, and these are usually the closures that are having a molded tamper evident band. So when looking at these two categories, I, in the next slide, again included the closures that we saw before, and I grouped them in two groups. So on the left side, we have the molded tamper evident band closures, and on the right side, we have the slitted tamper evident closures. When you look at these closures, it's quite clear that the slitted closures are looking similar to the standard flat caps as we know them for how many tens, thousands of years. And on the left side, we see the molded tamper evidence band that have this rotational asymmetric view. Depending on the closure type, some closures are also having a protruding hinge that is also delivering a geometry change when you look from above with a top-down camera on the closure. So we grouped these two closures in the molded TE bands, the slitted TE bands, but for us, the most important is rotational symmetric caps or rotational asymmetric caps. When implementing such a rotational asymmetric cap, those tamper evident band inspections are to be considered how they are impacted when implementing this closure. For the slitted solutions, it's the same principle as for overheight, canted, and presence. They are not affected by implementing this closure in your filling line. But for the rotational asymmetric tethered caps, the impact of implementing that closure depends on the inspection system that you have in your line. So let me, in the following slides, go through the different solutions, how you can inspect such closure. So we are now in slide number 10, where you see 3 times 4 views on a closure. So in the left image, we see a classical transmitted light image, which means that we bring light from the back through the closure in the direction of the camera. This delivers us a really clear shadow image that is perfect for measuring the closure height by using the reference of the carrier ring, the support ledge, for measuring a really precisely closure height. This is, however, not that suitable for inspecting the tamper evident band and finding small defects in the tamper evident band area. For those inspection solutions, an incident light inspection is way more suitable. As you can see in the middle image, the 4 cameras, we have only incident light, which means we only bring light from the same direction as the camera. This also delivers us the black background because we do not have light coming from the back. On the right side, you see the 4 images of a tethered closure where we combined the transmitted light and the incident light in one image. This way you have the possibility to have the really precise overheight measurement with a transmitted light, and you have the incident light for inspecting your tamper evident band in an accurate way. As you can see on the right side on those images, those 4 images are not looking identical. And that is exactly the rotational asymmetry that I talked about before. Because after a filler closure machine, bottles are running in a non-oriented direction. All of these 4 views can have different views on this rotational asymmetric tamper evident band. These 4 views establish as a 360-degree all-around view, but you cannot say that the view that you currently have in camera number 1, which is the left top, cannot end up in camera number 2, 3, or 4 for the next bottle. So we have to count, or we have to deal with the fact that the rotational asymmetry is coming in a way that we cannot predict because the bottles are running in a non-oriented direction. Of course, you can minimize this rotational asymmetry of the tamper evident band when only using transmitted light, as you can see on the left side on the slide. But if we move to the next slide, slide number 11, as you can see in the image on the left, a rotational asymmetric tethered cap with only the use of transmitted light already creates some deviating pixels as indicated by the green objects. When we compare this good closure on the left side with a defected closure in the middle, which has some broken bridges 180 degrees towards the protruding hinge, we see that the amount of deviating pixels for the defected closure are only slightly more than the amount of deviating pixels for the good closure. But we can still find this defect in comparison to the good closure. However, there are also defected closures that do not show more deviating pixels than the teached in good closure when only using transmitted light, as you can see in the right example. That way we will not be able to find these defects in the line when only using transmitted light. So not using incident light is not a solution to overcome problems of fine-tuning your inspection system and increasing the tolerances when you're implementing such a rotational asymmetric closure. Now we talked about incident light and transmitted light. I still want to point out the difference between a black-white camera and a color camera. So when you're using a black-white camera, the defects that you want to search have to be found based on gray values that are deviating. And when you're using color cameras, you can also use, you can search for pixels that are deviating from the teach-in color yellow in this case. That way, smaller defects and slight deviations can already be indicated and marked as deviating pixels. And therefore, smaller defects can be found when you use color cameras in comparison to black-white cameras. The last variable I want to point out today is the amount of cameras to be used. So as you can see in the image, we have our spectrum device in the middle with our FineView 2 cabinet next to it. Under the spectrum device, we can equip the system with a one-camera solution, as you can see on the right top. This camera will take one image of the closure with the use of incident and transmitted light. But the disadvantage of only having one view is that you have a blind spot of around 240 degrees of the closure sidewall. This problem we can overcome when you use the FineView 2 cabinet, or of course another 360-degree inspection system with the use of 4 cameras. And these 4 cameras are establishing a reliable 360-degree all-around view without having the problem of blind spots. Of course, these blind spots are the most problematic for a tamper-evident band inspection, because with a one-camera solution, I can already find the presence, the height, and other major defects. To give you a bit an idea why I talk about a blind spot of 240 degrees, I want to point out that the misunderstanding is often when we talk about a one-camera solution that this is a 180-degree camera solution. That is in fact not true, because we are inspecting round objects with one camera. We cannot evaluate 180 degrees of the closure, because if we would do that, we had to look around the edges of the closure, because we're watching a round object. So in fact, only around 120 degrees of the closure sidewall can be evaluated in a reliable way, as indicated by the red lines. We see this is the 180-degree circumference of the closure sidewall. The stripes that you see in this image, between each stripe is a distance of 5 degrees. And therefore, you can also get a feeling how accurate I can inspect the closure sidewall when I have a centered frontal view on the closure sidewall. On the left and the right side, when we move more to the edges, the distance between each 5 degrees is becoming way less. This means that I cannot inspect in a reliable manner. And the complete left and right edge, I cannot even evaluate at all. If a one-camera solution is used, we evaluate 120 degrees. When we have 4 cameras, we only use the center 90 degrees of each camera. That means, besides having no blind spot, we also become way more accurate, because we have that nice centered 90 degrees where we have a lot of distance between each 5 degrees to evaluate the closure accurately. The disadvantage, as I mentioned before, of this 240-degree blind spot is that I have to teach in new tolerances, taking into account the most dramatic or most asymmetric view possible. As you can see in the slide, the green marked objects are the pixels that are teached in as deviating from the color yellow of the closure. This is the most asymmetric view of this tethered cap in the area of the protruding hinge where the closure is opened. And the most symmetric view we can get from the closure is usually 180 degrees on the other side. As you can see in the slide, we find a really small amount of deviating pixels, as indicated in green. This is, however, the area of the closure where the most defects occur with broken bridges. But as explained, I have to increase the tolerances with the new view I have on the top part. This means that broken bridges can hardly be found 180 degree on the other side of the hinge, because I have to teach in all around the amount as I have in the worst asymmetric view, because the containers are running in a non-oriented way. This problem I can shortcut or reduce when I have 4 cameras, because these 4 cameras can share, so to say, the tolerances, the increase in tolerances. That way the impact is a little bit reduced, and the tolerances only have to be amended a little bit when having 4 views. But of course, this is not a solution without any compromises. Solution without any compromises, Heuft developed with a so-called developed view software of the closure sidewall. I want to show in this image to you. The principle is kind of a rollout of the complete sidewall in one view. That way we can evaluate the closure sidewall focused on the certain position that we're evaluating. How is this working? So let me show you the steps how the software is working. The first step is that we find, for a good closure, all the deviating pixels that we find in the 4 cameras. As you can see in the presentation, we find a lot of objects marked in green, and in the lower part of the 4 images we see a kind of histogram built of the amount of deviating pixels. This histogram is corresponding to the rollout of the sidewall. That means in the middle we see 2 peaks. Those 2 peaks are corresponding to the areas left and right next to the hinge, what also becomes our centering characteristic, to center this rollout on a certain characteristic, to always know how is the closure oriented towards my cameras. With this centering characteristic, we avoid having, so to say, non-oriented containers, because we can orient the view on the specific position. The next step is to let a lot of bottles run through, and the system is automatically teaching in the tolerances to be taken into account, because of course in a production environment we have slight production tolerances, but because the orientation of the hinge towards the cameras can also change from bottle to bottle, we have to teach in these tolerances to avoid any false rejects. And the last step is that these teached intolerances are set as the new standard for a good closure. And first defects that are exceeding this histogram will be rejected. That way we can be really accurate inspecting each position of the closure sidewall without having the need to increase the tolerances all around for the most dramatic asymmetric view as at the hinge part. The defect that we see here in the presentation is a rather big defect, just to give you an idea how a defect is looking in this histogram. However, this new software is capable to find even the smallest defects, as can be seen in the slide that I'm currently showing you. On the left and the middle image, you see the same closure. We only have turned the closure a little bit, so it's around 120 degree turned, to give you an idea that we have some broken bridges in the middle image, but these broken bridges do not exceed the amount of deviating pixels we see in the left image, where the part of the tethered hinge is already showing deviating pixels. Only with the new software that I just presented you, we are able to find such small defects. On the right side, we see another really minor defect that the software is capable to find, is that we have a broken bridge. The second bridge left of the hinge is broken. I want to point out the system is not finding the broken bridge itself, but the system is finding an increased amount of deviating pixels. This means that the gap between the tethered the tether band and the tamper evident band is slightly bigger on the left side of the hinge as on the right side of the hinge. Just to give you an idea how accurate and how precise this new developed software can find defects. Of course, it's just a question, do I want to find these defects or do I go for more, I would say, logical way of inspecting, where I say, okay, these defects, they are included in my production tolerances. I want to teach in these tolerances as a good closure, and I first want to reject when I have 2 or 3 broken bridges or a gap of 0.5 millimeter gap, etc. The software is really flexible to be set up, meeting the customer requirements, whether, of course, avoiding false rejects, but still keeping the high inspection reliability as the customer is seeking to implement in this line. I thank you for your attention and giving me the opportunity to present the impact of implementing tethered caps on closure inspection systems. And in the first slide, I included my email address. So if you still have any questions, feel free to contact me and we will support you with any question we have regarding the impact of implementing tethered caps. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Trunk, are you available? Could you start answering a question, please? Dr. Trunk? I love it when this happens.
Sorry, I'm available. I just
Okay.
wasn't able to unmute myself. Yes, I am, but I didn't see any. I didn't follow the chat, to be honest. So
okay, that's all right.
Please, I leave it up to you to spell out or choose any question that I will.
Right. These questions are specific to you, and if we get Sjoerd back, we'll go back to him. But until then, I'll be delighted if you would answer these. The first one that we have is from somebody called Graça Borges, who says, "Are you considering, or are you taking into account that the demand for recycled PET is coming from various industries other than beverages?" And she says she's talking about toys, textiles, automobiles. They're also looking to use our PET. Is that taken into account with the situation that you're looking at? Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you for the question. Excellent question. I had I've shown you the, let's say, the mass flows that we estimated, and we had 2 scenarios in terms of the so-called losses to other sectors. And one scenario was, if I'm right, we currently have some 900,000 tons per year that go to other sectors from the EU, in the EU, like automotive, like textiles especially. And we made 2 scenarios. One scenario was that this is the same, it stays stable. But the other scenario was that they correlate with the increase of recyclates that we anticipate. So, and even in the case where we have losses or that we have to other sectors mentioned, even then we would have enough recycled content, PET recyclates to comply with inclusion rates. This is quite stable statistics. And last point on this, in terms of circularity, of course, we want to, we are aware that it should leave in the loop of the PET bottles. But on the other side, you must see that we have in this recycling, even in the mechanical recycling, big big losses over the whole value chain. And if it is, let's say, in a long-lived application, you have, in terms of circularity, also advantages. But we do not encourage it. We made sure that our are in this by both scenarios that we can comply with these requirements.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got a question about capacity, and one of your earlier slides talked about the recycling capacity going up from 51.7 to 54 million tons. That's an increase of only 4% over the period, and actually I didn't quite know whether it was 2018 to 2023 or 2018 to 2030. Now, realistically, is that capacity sufficient? I mean, obviously, we would like to reuse plastics a lot more than we do, but is that capacity sufficient?
Yes, this is the recycling capacity for all packaging materials that we have in the EU, and you might be aware that our first objective of the upcoming regulation says we have to reduce packaging waste. So it is we think or we calculate or we aim to reduce the waste generation by 5%. Compared to the 2018 figures, which means about 23% compared to the baseline scenario. We reduce the generation of packaging waste of all packaging materials, and this reduction will mainly come from a reduction in cardboard, because this is the biggest packaging material. So we have a reduction in cardboard packaging waste generation, and that implies there we have significant reductions. But when it comes to plastic, there we have much significant increases in terms of recycling capacity that we need to meet the expected percentage, because currently we have only a recycling rate of in the directive of 22.5%, and we want to come up to 55%. So in plastics there is a big increase. So the overall increase from 51 to 54 might not see, but if you only have a look on plastic packaging, there we need a tremendous increase in recycling capacity.
Okay, and there's a few questions being asked about that, so we will come back to that. But there's something also that I noted. I think we talked about Article 1, Part 23, which talks about exempt materials. Now, what happens to exempt materials, and is it a get-out-of-jail-free card for people, for corporations, or for individuals, or indeed for countries who are still behaving in an irresponsible fashion? There are exempt materials. What happens to them?
These materials, well, let's take a concrete example. We are talking about medicines, pharmaceutical products. These must not contain recycled content. They are completely exempted. We did not want to have this because we from the onset we said we are talking about 2030 levels, and we wanted at least to give the incentive to the industry, the clear signal that they should go invest into that direction, to invest in research and development in recycling technologies, and then also in approval, because for food contact material of a certain recycled material, you need an approval from the Commission that this recycling technology can make it into food contact material. So therefore we wanted that, it was our idea to have from the onset no exemptions in order to nudge all these investments and developments that we would need to have something in place in 2030. But there was too much kind of let's say the precautionary principle, for instance, in the area of pharmaceuticals was there, that it cannot be the case that there is a disruption in medicine supply because we have a recycled content requirements for medicine packaging. So this was the reason, but in fact you're right. But as I said, we have already in the proposal we have a mechanism where we kind of review and see, for instance, if we find out in 27 that for veterinary medicines, there is no need for such. There is sufficient safe recyclates to incorporate them into a plastic packaging for veterinary medicine. Then we can remove this exemption. So it is not forever that they can be kind of can behave and they are out of this requirement.
Okay, thank you for that. That makes things a bit clearer. And glad that you're keeping an eye on it as well. Interestingly, there's a couple of people who have come up with questions about enforcement. Luis Almeida asks, what are the penalties foreseen for producers not complying with the minimum rPET content requirement for single-use plastic in 2025? And Mr. Marek points out that to his knowledge, he makes a few other points, but to his knowledge, only CSDD expected 2025 plus imposes meaningful penalty measures, legal or commercial, targeting the private sector. And how will the EU ensure the buy-in from the private sector other than just asking nicely? And he does make the point that the recycling industry is fighting for survival. Companies are selling below cost, going bankrupt, closing recycling lines, and big businesses are delaying their recycling targets. What's the enforcement? How do you make sure that the private sector complies?
Yeah, well, on the first point, the 25 targets are indeed, I mentioned it, are targets at member state level. So this is completely in the hand of the member states, and we consider this, we in the packaging world or unit here, we consider it as a weak point of the Single-Use Plastic Directive. To put it differently, what can the government in Athens do if they realize they have only they will only end up in 20% with 20 or 15% in 25 all over Greece, and therefore because of this problem we come now with our packaging proposal with different approach. So in the Single-Use Plastic Directive 25, it will be the case that the member state, it's fully in the hand of the member state how to enforce, how to make sure that the companies on their territory comply with it, also in terms of penalties or what the procedure, what kind of reporting they establish in order to make it through. In the packaging, it will be completely different. It is that game changer. We will have the product requirements. We will clearly say that each manufacturer has to for instance, on PET, has to have the 30% incorporated. He has to have a third-party certificate that his product is compliant with it, and there will be certificates, assurances, and the member state authorities, the market surveillance authority of the respective member states, they have to check these declarations or certificates for the recycled content percentage. And this the police, the fine in our system, in the market surveillance, is also in our regulation up to the member state to establish a prohibitive fine. So it's national law, but they must notify to the Commission if they what are the fines, the penalties that they establish for let's say 5% underperforming in this respect or that. So it is still the fine, the absolute fine will still be even in our system for the member states, but they must notify it to us. And if we say, but this is not really does not really prevent that he underperforms or is incompliant, then we can make a case against this member state and say you have to increase it. The last part, the second part of the question, well, we believe that in the EPR systems that we have there, this is the tool, the polluter pays principle, that the EPR fees collected, that this find this money should be channeled into the right investments. That means the EPR system operator, he must find out where is the bottleneck in a certain value chain, and then they must channel the investments into that bottleneck in order to make these capacities available.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we are out of time. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Trunk, for your contribution today. We have got some more questions on the chat, which we may put to you in writing and try and get in writing for the recording to get the information back to the people. But thank you for your time. Thank you also to Sjoerd van Laar, who unfortunately was cut off, and thanks to everybody who has attended. It's been a very interesting session. Wish we had more time. See you next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye now.